I've become convinced that the reason for our current cultural moment being so hurried, depressed, confused is due to the four following things. Number one, the pursuit of pursuing financial wealth. Number two, our society of more, and more. Number three, today's hustle culture. And four, a culture deeply addicted to our phones. So we're going to be focusing into these 4 points today. First, let me speak about the pursuit of financial wealth. Money has always been something that has prohibited us from coming towards God. And this should not come to anyone's surprise, because for some reason, money has always caused humans issues. Let's explore what the Apostle James has to say on what money can do to us. James 5:1-2 says this, "Come now, you rich people, weep and wail over the miseries that are coming on you. Your wealth is rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten." So, the problem with money here is that it has the potential for us to store our treasures in money or something else that is not God alone. Jesus tells us famously in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6:19-21, "Don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves don't break in and steal." And then Jesus says this just amazing line, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Money has always made us more busy, has corrupted us, has ruined people's lives, and has influenced humans to always making terrible decisions. And worst of all, it has brought people away from God. There's a good reason that the Bible consistently and strongly commands against the love of money. The Apostle Paul writes this, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and by craving it, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." Notice how Paul has said, craving money, we wander from the faith and we pierce ourselves with many griefs. But, Will, what if I could insert your line of amount of money that you could solve my problems? What if I could have this much, or that much, or this much? Would it not solve my problems that I have? But the problem is, the historic saying, more money, more problems, is actually true. We are hurried. We want to chase the bag, but when we choose a potential career we ask, how much money will I make? We fall into the trap always of loving money, and this moves us towards from simplicity to superficiality. The famous actor Jim Carrey says famously, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so that they will know it is not the answer." But yet, we chase money and we make ourselves busy for it. And friends, this is wrong. The second we want to touch on is materialism. Our society of more and more. Have you ever thought that it is maybe a bad thing that the average size of the American home has nearly tripled in the last 50 years? Or that it has been recently discovered that the average household in North America has 300,000 items? Or perhaps that 3.1% of the world's children live in America, but they own 40% of the toys globally consumed annually? These statistics, I would argue, are scary. And honestly, our odd addiction to always needing an excessive amount of stuff has only been elevated in our current cultural moment. And have we ever thought that perhaps the surplus of stuff that we have is only fueling the fire for more hurry? The more things we want, we need to pay for and we need to chase. In Richard Foster's brilliant book, The Celebration of Discipline, he states that in today's world specifically, we are made to feel ashamed to wear clothes or drive cars until they're worn out. Could this be true? That we really need the 30th hoodie, or we really need to follow the newest trend that will die in 6 months? You see, chasing materialism is an empty pursuit. Have you ever ordered anything on Amazon? And my guess is you have. And what happens is you just feel so excited when you order whatever you've got, and you're like, this surely will fulfill every single thing that I've ever needed. It's weird. Like every time that kind of happens. But what's really funny is actually statistics have begun to prove that when we open this package, we feel a level of depression. The worst moment is once you open the package, just 10 minutes later, you're like, oh, that's it? We want more and more. But what's funny is actually when we get more and more, we feel more dissatisfied. We feel more discontent. And here's the thing. The Bible doesn't pursue this or support this either. As Scripture says, God made man simple. I want to say that again. God made man simple, and man's complex problems of his own devising. There seems to be a problem with our world today, and it tells us that if we have one more thing, we will be fulfilled. But in reality, it only creates more dissatisfaction and more hurry. The next thing we need to move on to is hustle culture. And I think this one is probably the one that has most impacted me and caused me the most hurry. Have you ever put a thought into this, that being a workaholic is actually destroying you? Trying to chase the perfect grades at any cost, or working yourself to death if you work, was probably destroying you and probably making you devised and hurt. Elon Musk, a face behind hustle culture who serves as the CEO for not one, not two, but 5 companies, has said in order to make an impact on our society, quote by quote, he says, workers should put 80 to 100 hours a week to quote unquote change the world. Society is beginning to tell us that we need to find our value in our work. If we can get that job promotion or we can get that pay raise, we will finally be satisfied. But what do we do then? We work. And we try to find meaning in our hustle culture to change the world. But what if this is false and only vortexes us into more hurry? Jeremiah Burroughs, a Puritan pastor from the 1600s, states this famously: if you want a satisfied life, do not grasp too much of the world. Do not take in more of the business in the world that God calls you to. And he later on says, a soul that is capable of God can be filled with nothing else but God. I think Burroughs is onto something. We are trying to bite off more than we can even handle. And this is not the way of Jesus. Now, although Jesus had a full life, he was always rested. The writer of Matthew states this: after dismissing the crowds, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone. We also learn in the Gospel of Luke alone, Jesus at minimum will desert to a quiet place at least 9 times. Jesus rested. Hustle culture tells us that we're not enough, when God tells us that he is more than enough for us. In fact, Jesus invites us to a true rest in the Gospel of Matthew. I think right now this is one of my favorite passages in the Bible. Matthew 11:28-30 says this: come to me, Jesus says, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Friends, there is a glimpse to a better way. But lastly, and most currently relevantly, is our current addiction for our phones. And this is not causing us hurry in the way we think it, but here's the thing. Your phone is causing you much more hurt than you might even realize. This is very interesting because it was only in 2007 that Steve Jobs changed life of so many with the iPhone. Now, most of us cannot even imagine life without a smartphone. Take this. The American adult spends an average of 3 hours and 43 minutes a day on their smartphone, compared to an average of 7 hours and 22 minutes that our emerging generation spends. To put that into perspective, for an adult, that's 26.5 hours a week, and for an emerging adult, that is 52.5 hours a week. 2,737 hours a year. I think we forget this, that our phones don't work for us. They work for a multi-billion-dollar corporation in California. A reason why we have moved towards a place of hurry and culture today is because of our smartphones. I have become convinced that phones are wrecking our lives. They have begun to drift from their original purpose to enhance and improve life. The early research on the harm of phones is beginning to prevail, and it is ugly. Studies show that the more screen time spent means a more rapid increase of depression and anxiety levels. In a survey done in 2018, we are showing that the non-fatal self-harm spike has gone up 189% by girls ages 10 to 14. And the iPhone was released in 2007. The correlation there is strong. Is this really healthy for us to be spending these kinds of minutes on our devices? Do we think that our phones will give us the satisfaction that we are pursuing? If this is not causing us extreme hurry, I do not know what will. 52.5 hours a week is not healthy by any means, and everyone knows that. There's even a new saying amongst youth today that is called screen time shame. It's basically that people today don't want to look at the screen time app on their phone because they will be ashamed at how high the hours have been. And honestly, I have been there. Now, the thing is this though. The Bible calls us to something greater than a phone addiction. The Apostle Paul states this profoundly. He says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out. If we have food and clothing, we will be content with these." We've brought nothing here, and we bring nothing out. Paul states that we only need food and clothing. Because we live in Canada, it's wet and cold most of our year. I might add shelter as well. But here's the thing. The Apostle Paul means it when he says that we don't need much. I think we would not only be okay without our phones, but honestly, statistically, we would be even better. But here's the thing. These things are destroying us today, these 4 things. And what do we do about it? What do we do about all of this today?